Hello everyone, my name is Michael and welcome back to the Sovereign Gaming YouTube channel where I build worlds, lots, and add in some of my thoughts on games that I enjoy. I want to continue my ranking and ratings of the Sims 1's franchise with the very next installment, the House Party Expansion Pack. Unlike the Living Large expansion pack, the House Party expansion pack tends to be forgettable amongst the fanbase. Sure, there was the fun party dancers, the bubble blowing machine, the different themed parties, townies, and I guess the mime. But even within the Sims 1 franchise, the House Party expansion pack doesn't get a lot of love, and I absolutely see why. As I have done before, I will be looking at the following criteria and scoring it out of 10 based on my opinion and playing experience. And that criteria includes the concept, the gameplay features, the impact on the current franchise, and the impact on future Sims franchises. Based on those scores, I'm going to throw each of these games and expansion packs on a tier list that I created at the end of the video. And today we are going to cover the Sims House Party expansion pack, and I plan to look at this expansion pack with both love and a critical eye. So let's get into it, starting with the concept. It was March of 2001 before the Sims players saw another expansion pack, nearly 7 months since the Living Large expansion pack was released in August of the year 2000. And that is a pretty big gap of time compared to what Sims fans are accustomed to now. When House Party was announced as an expansion pack, it was marketed to Sims players as the party of the year for the game of the year. To be fair, the House Party expansion pack did deliver on what it was marketing itself to be, an expansion pack that's focused on parties. What makes this concept of an expansion pack so underwhelming for me is that I know what's next, and that is the Hot Date expansion pack, where I feel that the franchise really starts to step into its own identity. But that's the next video. Let's keep talking about House Party. If I was reviewing this expansion pack in 2003 after the Make and Magic expansion pack was released, and being able to look at the franchise as a whole, firstly, I would be much younger, and secondly, I would have come to a similar conclusion that the concept of House Party kind of feels like a waste of an expansion pack in the Sims 1's entire franchise. I also think that Maxis, or EA, I guess, realized that House Party and Living Large weren't strong concepts by themselves by the time we were in the middle of the Sims 1 franchise's development, and that was why they lumped them in together as part of the Sims 1 Deluxe Edition, which offers the base game, House Party, and Living Large. I can't even select House Party or Living Large as part of the games that I'm talking about in the metadata on my YouTube channel. So that also kind of speaks to the fact that they are not considered important even by YouTube. Just wanted to share that funny thing there. Anyways, the concept of House Party itself is just partying with different themes as determined by the costume trunk, essentially. I will say that they did market it very well in terms of making the trailer look a lot more exciting than what the actual gameplay is, sort of technically speaking, but it's not like they were mismarketing it at all. But at the end of the franchise, I actually think that the House Party expansion pack had the weakest concept of them all. I am going to be brutal and I'm going to give the concept a 0 out of 10 since I feel like the House Party expansion pack concept was marketed to incite FOMO in players at the time of its release, and the concept itself barely held up in 2003 at the end of the franchise, and the concept would never be revisited again as an expansion pack because its focus is just not substantial enough to sustain itself in future franchises. The concept of House Party in of itself, or just like partying in general, is just not robust enough to really expand upon and to release as an expansion pack all on its own. But for now, let's move on from the concept and talk a little bit about its gameplay. I'm afraid that when it comes to the gameplay features of the House Party expansion pack, things don't fare much better for the pack itself in this review. When I'm looking at gameplay, I like to look at the entertainment value offered in the game and determine whether or not the gameplay features will keep the player entertained and coming back to play more. Your gameplay features can really only go as far as the concept you are marketing that players can expect. I think that time proves again and again in literally everything out there in the world that you can have a strong concept but a weak execution that affects the quality and vice versa. I also believe that your concept informs your execution, which is the case with House Party, and it is also why I start by analyzing the concept first in these kinds of reviews. Does the House Party expansion pack deliver the gameplay based on the concept? I'll give that an easy yes, but the vision and concept of the House Party expansion pack was really weak to begin with, so the bar was set pretty low in my opinion. In order for me to be impressed with House Party as an expansion pack, they would really have to expand upon the different party themes that players had to play with. For example, having certain objects associated with different themes, such as needing to have a disco dance floor in order to have a successful disco party, or getting 2 Sims to ride the bull for a country party. This would have added unique challenges, and it would have made each of the parties feel more unique, whereas right now it feels like all themed parties really do is just change your sim into a different costume. They could have also expanded upon the social aspect of parties as well, possibly adding in more social interactions between sims. So that was another aspect that they really could have expanded upon, but they chose not to. And with all things considered, I can give credit where it is due, and Maxis accurately delivered on their House Party expansion pack concept. It's just that the concept wasn't developed enough as an expansion pack to really wow players. At the end of this section, I will give the gameplay a 4 out of 10 since House Party was a really weak concept. Now let's talk about House Party's impact on the Sims 1 franchise. If you obviously couldn't tell, the Sims 1 House Party is my least favorite expansion pack of the entire Sims 1 franchise. However, I do think that I am justified in believing this, since its concept really deflated the momentum of the franchise at this time, in my opinion. When looking at the franchise in 2003, when Making Magic was released, I have to ask, what impact did The Sims 1's House Party expansion pack have on the Sims 1 franchise? My answer to that is, it's forgettable. At this point in the franchise, a year out from its initial release in 1999/2000, Sims players weren't able to take their Sims out of the house. It all felt very claustrophobic and agoraphobic at this time in this franchise, and I bet that Sims players were questioning whether or not their Sims would ever leave the house lot that they live on, and what the direction of the franchise was really going to take. Now I get it. This is a new game in a new gaming space starting out as a franchise, but there was a 7-month gap between Live Enlarge and House Party's release. Within that 7-month gap, and likely before that, you can bet that Maxis planned out what the rest of the Sims 1 franchise was going to play out as, and what expansion packs they were planning to release. These gaming studios know what expansion pack is coming out next well before the players do. I say this because the 7 months leading up to House Party's release was a lot of time to develop an expansion pack. And I am making a couple of assumptions here, and I'll explain those assumptions in a bit. But from House Party to Hot Date, there was another similar gap of time, about 7 to 8 months up until when Hot Date was released, which, in my opinion, is a much superior expansion pack. Anyways, the fact that House Party was a concept considered expansion pack worthy within the same year as Hot Date kind of blows my mind, because there were similar development timelines between the two packs. Now granted, and I said this before, I am making a huge assumption here that I don't even think will is actually going to be something that applies. But the assumption that I'm making is that they don't start development until after the last expansion pack releases, and I'm very likely wrong in that assumption. I'm just kind of going off of what I know for a fact right now, and based on what we know with those timelines. Anyways, the impact on the rest of the Sims 1's franchise was really unnoticeable. If a player back in 2003 and in 2023 forgot to purchase the House Party expansion pack after going through a Sims 1 shopping craze, they would likely not notice that they were missing some features in the franchise. And that would actually be almost impossible at this stage, because the deluxe edition is something that just includes Live Enlarge and House Party expansion packs. So, you know, they're not strong enough to survive in the market on their own, even at the time that the Sims 1 franchise was the only Sims franchise out there. And for that, I'm going to give it another 0 out of 10 for its impact on the current franchise. House Party's impact on future expansion packs fares a little better, because like I mentioned before, I think that Maxis realized that House Party is a really weak concept for an expansion pack, which is why they offer it as part of the deluxe edition of the Sims 1 base game. But House Party did have an impact on future franchises, in that it confirmed that certain gameplay features, namely hosting parties, is something that should be included in a base game going forward. It was a lesson that taught Maxis and EA what really needs to be encompassed within your base games. Since The Sims 1, hosting parties has been included in base games for The Sims 2, 3, and 4. Each of its successors took house parties to the next level, such as having specific parties that need to meet certain conditions. Namely, these days, across those future franchises, we can host house parties, birthday parties, family reunions, funerals, wedding parties, and the list does go on. Taking it back to The Sims 1, house parties were never a feature that players were outright asking for at the time. Rather, they were requesting some way to get their Sims to leave the house. However, I will say that hosting parties was a feature that is kind of underrated and it goes a little unnoticed these days, but hosting parties needs to be a base game feature, not a standalone expansion pack concept. And it seems that Maxis kind of admits this by making House Party only available through the purchase of a deluxe edition. And really, like, when looking back and looking forward with House Party's installment here, it really only made a small impact, in that the House Party expansion pack really helped to inform what should be included in the base game, namely hosting parties. And yeah, it did add in some objects and some NPCs being added in that continually get referenced and reintroduced in the future installments and future franchises and all that, but its impact was really minimal in my opinion. Because the House Party expansion pack had minimal impact on future franchises, I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 10. When adding up all of the scores, the House Party expansion pack gets a 7 out of 40, putting it in the bad category. This isn't to say that House Party didn't have its charms, nor that it was unenjoyable for some players. Rather, I have judged its concept and gameplay to be underwhelming and unforgettable. To be clear, I am taking into consideration what The Sims 1 was like back in the early 2000s. When I was a kid back then, I didn't actually pick up my first copies of The Sims 1 until Hot Date was released as an expansion pack. Instead, I would just play at friends' places and whatnot. And a big reason why is that I knew I would be sucked into the franchise, and I also wasn't convinced that there was enough gameplay. I have always been someone that can spot a trend, but allow the trend to play out before deciding if it's right for me to participate in. And that has served me very well, and it was the case with The Sims House Party. I saw it on the shelves, I saw it with The Sims 1, I knew what it was all about, but I just wasn't convinced that it was the experience that I necessarily wanted to participate in. If you enjoyed this review and my thoughts on the Sims 1 franchise so far, then feel free to leave a comment, like, and subscribe. Helps me to beat those algorithms, and more importantly, I want to hear from you. But furthermore, I just want to take a moment to say thank you for watching, and that you are more than welcome to share your thoughts on the House Party expansion pack in the comment section below. I love reading stories and all of that, so feel free to sound off in that comment section. Up next, I'll review The Sims 1 Hot Date expansion pack. I'm looking forward to the next review, as I feel that this was the time where the Sims 1 franchise started making some boss moves. So I'll see you there in the next review video.